Lesson 1. Breadbasket Colonies. Make inferences. As you read, make inferences about people, places, and events in the Middle Atlantic colonies. Big idea. The Middle Atlantic colonies attracted people of many different cultures and religions. Vocabulary: refuge, trial by jury, justice, farm produce, Great Awakening. Fast fact: Manhattan Island was bought from the Manhattan Indians for goods worth 60 Dutch guilders, or about $24. While the Puritans were building settlements in New England, other settlers were establishing colonies to the south. This region, which included present-day New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, came to be known as the Middle Atlantic colonies. The first settlers in the Middle Atlantic region discovered that when the land was cleared of trees and rocks, it was good for farming. The climate was also good for growing crops. The summers were long, and the amount of rain each year was just right for crops such as wheat, corn, and rye. In fact, the Middle Atlantic colonies produced so many crops used in making bread that they came to be called the breadbasket colonies. The region's rich resources attracted people from many European countries and people of various religions. New Netherland. Not long after the English started colonies in North America, the Dutch began to build settlements in their own colony called New Netherland. They settled in parts of what are today New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. The Dutch came to the area because the explorer Henry Hudson had claimed it for their country, Holland, in 1609. A few years after Hudson's visit, the New Netherland Company established several trading posts in the Hudson River Valley. In 1621, the Dutch West India Company took control of trade in the area. The first Dutch settlers arrived 3 years later. Some were sent to a fort on the Delaware River, and others sailed to a fort on the Hudson River. In 1626, the Dutch began building a fort and laying out a town on Manhattan Island in New York Bay. They called the settlement New Amsterdam. In that same year, Peter Minuit, one of the directors of the New Netherland colony, bought Manhattan Island from the Manhattan Indians. During the next few years, New Amsterdam grew and became the capital of New Netherland. The Dutch built other settlements that would one day become Brooklyn, Kingston, Rensselaer, and Schenectady, New York. The Dutch welcomed settlers to New Amsterdam from many countries. People from Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, and Spain all made their homes there. Among these newcomers was the first group of Jews to settle in North America. However, the Jews in New Amsterdam did not have many of the same rights as Christian colonists had. Under Dutch rule, Jews could not work at certain jobs and could not freely practice their religion. Review. Where did the Dutch first settle in North America? New Netherland becomes New York. In 1646, the Dutch West India Company appointed Peter Stuyvesant as Director General of New Netherland. When Stuyvesant arrived in New Amsterdam the following year, he found New Netherland in trouble. The government was having problems. The settlers were fighting over land with the neighboring Delaware and Wappinger Indians, and with other European colonists. Not long after he arrived, however, Stuyvesant helped resolve the conflicts over land. Stuyvesant's strong way of ruling helped solve some problems, but it created new problems between him and the colonists. The colonists wanted more voice in their government, which Stuyvesant would not allow. Despite such disagreements, the colony prospered under Stuyvesant's leadership. He expanded New Netherland into what is now New Jersey. Then he pushed south into what is now Delaware, taking over the small colony of New Sweden in 1655. Swedish settlers had founded the colony in 1638. It was chiefly a group of trading posts built around Fort Christina, where today Wilmington, Delaware stands. Even though the population of New Netherland remained small, the English still thought that the Dutch colony prevented their own colonies from expanding. This was one reason King Charles II of England declared war on Holland. The king then told his brother, James, the Duke of York, that he could have the Dutch colonies if he could seize them. In 1664, English warships sailed into the harbor at New Amsterdam. Stuyvesant tried to get the Dutch settlers to fight the English, but they refused. Stuyvesant had to give up the colony. The English split up New Netherland, giving it the present-day names of New Jersey and New York. New York City grew from the Dutch capital, New Amsterdam. Review. What were some of Peter Stuyvesant's accomplishments? New Jersey. Not long after the English divided New Netherland, the Duke of York gave New Jersey and part of New York to John Berkeley and George Carteret. The two offered to sell the land at low prices to anyone in England willing to settle in North America. The offer attracted many settlers to New Jersey. Among them were numerous members of the Society of Friends, a religious group also known as the Quakers. In 1674, a group of Quakers led by Edward Byllinge bought Berkeley's share of New Jersey. They started the first colony in North America founded by Quakers. The Quakers believe that all people are equal and basically good. Because they think that violence is always wrong, they refuse to carry guns or to fight. They also believe in solving all problems peacefully. In England, Quakers often were treated poorly because of their beliefs, particularly their refusal to fight for the king. In New Jersey, they hoped to find a refuge or safe place where they could live and worship as they pleased. Review. Why did many Quakers refuse to fight for the English king? Pennsylvania and Delaware. While New Jersey was being sold to groups of Quakers, King Charles II gave a charter to William Penn, who had become a Quaker. The charter made Penn the proprietor or owner of what is now Pennsylvania. The English king granted him the region because the king owed a debt to Penn's father. Penn wanted to call his new colony Sylvania, which means woods. King Charles asked that the land be named Pennsylvania. The new name, which means Penn's Woods, honored William's father. Before coming to Pennsylvania, William Penn planned his colony's government. In 1682, he wrote a document called the Frame of Government of Pennsylvania. It provided for a legislature called the General Assembly to make the laws for the colony. Penn's frame of government also provided for the citizens of Pennsylvania to have freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and trial by jury. Trial by jury guarantees a person accused of breaking the law the right to be tried by a jury of fellow citizens. When Penn arrived in Pennsylvania, he met with many of the leaders of the local Delaware Indian tribes. He paid them for most of the land King Charles II had given him. A legend says that Penn and Tamenund, a chief of the Delaware people, exchanged wampum belts as a sign of friendship. Indian leaders came to respect Penn and believed he was their friend. Penn had said, "Let them have justice and you win them." Penn also ensured that his colonists were ruled with justice, or fairness. Penn also became the owner of what is now Delaware. When colonists in Delaware asked for their own General Assembly, Penn granted it to them. The first Delaware General Assembly met in 1704. Review. What did the right of trial by jury guarantee a person? Democratic values. Justice. In his Frame of Government of Pennsylvania, William Penn included the idea that all citizens of the Pennsylvania colony were to be treated equally by the law. Penn's Frame of Government guaranteed everyone the right to a trial by jury. This right was important because it allowed a group of citizens, instead of a single judge, to decide whether or not someone had broken the law. This method is a more democratic way of making this kind of decision. It gives decision-making control to the people. In most countries, there was no right to trial by jury. Today, the United States government upholds the idea of equal justice for all. All people in the United States have the right to a fair trial and to equal treatment under the law. Analyze the value. 1. How did Penn make sure people in the colony would be treated equally under the law? 2. Make it relevant. Imagine that a student in your school has been accused of breaking a school rule. With some classmates, decide whether one person or a group should determine whether the student really broke the rule. Market towns. Most people in the Middle Atlantic colonies made their living by farming. Because the soil was fertile and the land was not too mountainous, many were able to develop large farms. On these farms, they were able to grow enough food to feed their families and also have a surplus. Farmers depended on market towns as places to trade their livestock and their surplus farm produce, grains, fruits, and vegetables, for goods and services. Market towns became a common sight throughout the Middle Atlantic colonies. In most market towns, a general store sold goods such as tools, cloth, shoes, stockings, and buttons. Near the general store, there was often the shop of a cobbler who made and repaired shoes. Nearby, there was also a grist mill where grain was ground into flour and meal, and a sawmill where logs were sawed into lumber. Unlike the New England colonies, the Middle Atlantic colonies welcomed people of different religions. Towns in these colonies often had more than one kind of church. A Presbyterian church, for example, might be only a block away from a Methodist church and a Quaker meeting house. Interest in religion led to the Great Awakening, a movement that called for a rebirth of religious ways of life. This way of thinking quickly spread through other English colonies during the 1730s and 1740s. Review: what kind of goods were bought and sold in market towns? Lesson 1 Review. Make inferences. Why do you think the Dutch settlers refused to fight when the English arrived to take over New Netherland? 1. Big idea. Why did people of many different cultures and religions settle the Middle Atlantic colonies? 2. Vocabulary. Use the term refuge in a sentence. 3. Timeline. In what year did the English take over New Netherland? 4. Geography. Where was the first Quaker colony in North America located? 5. Critical thinking. Hypothesize. What might New York City be like today if the Dutch had kept control of New Amsterdam?